Hello, Exploring Computer Science class. Welcome to class today, virtual class, I guess. This week we're going to talk about computer safety. So this might be a long lecture, but the good news for all of you is that it's the only really lecture this week, and so just kind of tune in. There will be a quiz on the LMS. I'll post it up tomorrow. You can even take the quiz while you're listening to this lecture and clicking through this. So you can do that. It's kind of an open note quiz. Just to make sure you understood the information. But let's talk about how to keep yourself safe, particularly online, by using the internet. The internet is a wonderful invention. I really think we don't really understand yet the implications of the internet. It really has changed everything. You have to go back to about the 1400s before you have a human invention that has changed society so much, and that invention was the printing press. The printing press changed everything overnight. The internet has changed everything overnight. Over the last 20 years that we've had the internet, it's changing everything. In fact, it's because of the internet that we can do this right now, and I can record this lecture and send it to you. I used to have to write out an entire lecture and then give it to a person who would ride a horse to you and give you the scroll. And then if you wanted to give it to other people, I'd have to copy it down 20 times. Now I just send out a link in 30 seconds. It's a crazy thing. So let's start with what the internet is and how the internet works. If you will. Here's how the internet works. If you take my 1030 class, we go way more in depth on this. We spend a whole week on it. We're just going to focus on two things about the internet right now. The first is the internet isn't anywhere. And it isn't owned by anyone. There is not one central location where all the files of the internet exist. Instead, how the internet works is it works by transferring files between devices, between machines, between phones, between tablets and laptops. That is how it works. And so every file that is transferred via the internet exists somewhere on somebody's machine, somewhere in the world, but there's not a central location where they are. And so that's very important, that the internet works by transferring files between machines and devices. So when you connect to the internet, you are giving somebody else's machine permission to access and alter your machine. Very important. We'll come back to that. The next thing is how the internet works is every machine or device, every cell phone, every laptop, every tablet, everything that connects to the internet has an address. And it is a traceable address. If it wasn't traceable, then you couldn't get the files that you needed. And so when you access the internet, you type in www.whatever.com, whatever.com has an address. And you are saying, go to this machine that has whatever.com and transfer whatever file is on that machine over to my machine, send it to this address. And so your machine, your phone right now has an address, and anybody can see where that address is. Anybody can see where your phone is right now in the world. They can trace it right to wherever you are. So that's going to be very important later on too. So the internet works by transferring files, and every machine has a traceable address. That's how the internet works. So with that said, let's talk about internet safety and security. The first question, and I've already asked you this, is what do you have to lose? What do you personally have to lose by using the internet? Now, some of you might say not much. I'm in high school. I don't have much money. I don't have much of an identity. There's an old movie in the 80s where a guy gets mad at another guy and he says, I'm going to sue you for everything you've got. And the homeless guy looks back at him and says, oh, that's going to be a ton of fun because I got nothing. So you might be the homeless guy. You might be like, I don't have nothing. And yet the truth is you have more than you think you have. You have more to lose than you think you have. So let's talk through what you have to lose. The main things you have to lose, first, your money. You can lose a lot of money online. You can lose a lot of money in scams, which we'll talk about later. You can lose your identity. When we talk about identity theft, we are talking about financial identity. When you go to apply for a loan, you have a few things you need to provide to the person lending you money. If it's buying a house, buying a car, even a payday loan, that you need a birth certificate, you need a social security number, and you need a driver's license. If somebody can steal those things online from you, and they're easier to get than you think they are, if they could get your passwords and get into your bank account, they can take out a loan in your name, and the bank is going to expect you to repay that loan. And it's very difficult to convince the bank you were not the one that took out that loan. So you can lose your financial identity. People can borrow money in your name, and you're going to have to declare bankruptcy. You can lose your files and your hardware. That's getting into viruses, which is actually what we're going to talk about next. When I was a freshman in college, we were one of the first campuses to have Wi-Fi. It was 2003. That's right when Wi-Fi started taking off. And there were 2 or 3 viruses that came through the campus network overnight and destroyed every file on campus. I turned on my computer and it loaded Windows, and then within seconds it reset the computer and gave me what's called the blue screen of death, and I had lost everything. I lost all my papers that I was about ready to turn in. I lost my music. I lost some movies that I had saved to my hard drive. I lost everything. So you can lose your files. You can also lose your hardware. It's not that hard to write a virus that turns off your fan and overheats your computer. It's not that hard to write a virus that torches your hard drive. So viruses don't just affect your software, they can affect your hardware too. And the last 2 things here, this is more social media stuff. You can lose your job. There are teachers at LCA who have lost their jobs at LCA because of things they posted on on Facebook. There are teachers who have lost their jobs at our school for things they posted on Facebook. Be very careful what you post. Be very careful what you text. Any text can be screenshotted. Be very careful even what you put on Snapchat. Snapchat makes it go away, but you can still screenshot it right then. Be careful. You can lose your job by using social media irresponsibly. When I first began coaching, there were 3 football kids on the high school's football team. This was at another school. And they posted a picture of them drinking. They were 16 years old, and they went out drinking. And they were thrown off the football team. They were suspended from high school athletics, and the football team went on to not have a very great season because they needed those 3 people. Everybody said it was unfair, but at the same time, you were bragging about breaking the law and breaking the rules of the High School Athletic Association. So what did you think was going to happen? And then the last thing you can lose is your freedom. We are not just talking about being kidnapped here, even though we will talk about that. We are also talking about being arrested. Remember, every single device has a traceable address. Remember that. So if you access anything online illegally, you can be arrested and thrown in jail. We'll talk about that in a little bit later. So with that said, that's what you have to lose, which is quite a bit. You may think I'm just a high schooler, I don't have much of these things. You have a lot more than you think you have. You have a lot more than you think you do. So with that said, how are we going to lose these things? How does this all work? Well, first let's talk about viruses and worms. This is a very important distinction. Viruses are there to attack an individual system. They work a lot like a virus in your body works. It's a file that is written to corrupt other files, and so the virus copies itself over and spreads throughout your system, and eventually it steals everything. A worm is built to take down the connection between network devices, and so we talk more about worms in my 1030 class, but worms are different than viruses. A worm is a virus that destroys a network. It destroys the connection between computers on a network. That's the main difference. Viruses destroy your personal system's files. Worms destroy the ability of the computers to connect to each other. So here's some types of viruses. The first and most important type of virus is a Trojan horse. If you take my 1030 class, we'll talk more about how operating systems and computer companies can prevent viruses and detect viruses before they do harm. Right now, the operating systems, Windows and Apple OS and Android and Linux and all that, they are programmed pretty well to detect when a virus has been loaded onto a computer. So with that said, if you want to be protected from viruses, the number one thing that the way they're going to get on your computer is through what's called a Trojan horse. If any of you know the Battle of Troy, which Homer talked about in the Iliad, the Trojan horse looked innocent. It was a gift. They were saying to Troy, you won. Here's a wonderful statue of a horse to show how strong and powerful and mighty you are. And they said, oh, yay, we'll put this horse in our city square. And so they brought it into their city gates, but the horse was full of viruses, right? It was actually full of warriors who opened the gate and everybody rushed in. Go watch Troy on Netflix. I think it's still there with Brad Pitt. It's not a great movie, but it's still fun. But that's the same type of way a Trojan horse virus works. It looks like an innocent email attachment. Somebody will post on Facebook or text you something, and they'll say, hey, go to this link. It's awesome. And you'll go to the link, and it will download a virus to your computer and destroy everything. And it will be your fault. And so beware of Trojan horses. That's the number one way a virus is going to get on your computer, is by pretending to be something else, pretending to be a fun YouTube video, pretending to be a downloadable link, an article written by a friend. So just Trojan horses be careful there. That's the number one way they're going to get on your computer these days. The next three there, the rootkit, the adware, the spyware, these are types of viruses that hide under the scenes. You don't know you have them. A rootkit takes over your system, but you don't know it's there. And so it monitors every single thing you do. A keylogger, I don't know if you guys have heard that word, a keylogger logs everything you type. So it's a very easy way to get a password and a username. And also some sensitive information. Another type of popular rootkit virus is something that turns your camera on without you knowing it. And so rootkit will turn a camera on and film you. And if you're doing something illegal or inappropriate while you're using your computer, they have that on film and they can use that to blackmail you. That's not just the stuff of science fiction TV shows. It has happened multiple times in real life. Adware spams you with ads. So it just fills your screen up with ads to annoy you. And spyware is kind of like the camera and the keylogger. It just spies on you and spies what you're doing. It sends your email and internet history to the person who wrote the virus. So those are the different types of viruses. Rootkit takes over your system. Adware spams you with ads. Spyware spies on everything you're doing. So be careful before you download an email attachment. Be careful before you just download a video online or something. They usually come with these types of viruses. So how are we going to avoid viruses? Well, one is don't open attachments via untrusted emails. If you get an email from someone and there's nothing in the subject and there's nothing in the body and they just say, hey, check out this cool video, don't click on it. My mom has a nasty habit of sending me attachments via email with no subject and nothing in the body. So I email her back or I call her and say, Mom, was this you? And she says, yes. And I say, Mom, you need to say, because I thought somebody hacked your email. You need to say, hi, son, hope you're doing well. This video made me think of you because it's about running and you're a runner. It's about computers and you teach computers, right? So don't open attachments via untrusted emails. If one of your friends just sends you an attachment with nothing else, double check that they sent it to you. Don't download files from an untrusted website. Be very careful what websites you're downloading files from. I have a story about that later. And then keep your web browser and your operating system up to date. As I said earlier, your web browser programs, Google and Microsoft Windows and Apple, they do a pretty good job of making sure that viruses don't get to your system. And so your operating system knows what a virus looks like. If you keep it up to date and you keep it updated, then you'll be protected against viruses. So that's viruses. That's how to keep viruses from damaging your computer. Next, let's talk about hackers. In the 1970s, a hacker was actually a good person. It was somebody who was trying to modify a file to make it better or programmed or make it do something different. It's kind of like video game modders today. They would download a file and then they would look at the code and change things around. It's kind of fun. But then there was another group of people in the 70s, 80s called crackers, whom we might now call hackers. Crackers were actually trying to crack or break the system. Crackers were trying to destroy something. They're trying to hurt something. They're trying to get access to something that they shouldn't have access to. Once again, if you take my 1030 class, we'll go into more detail on this. But today, the main threat from hackers and crackers is actually what we call social engineers. Social engineers are trying to engineer a way in the real world that they can get access to a digital network or file. That's what a social engineer is they are trying to befriend you and gain your trust so you'll give them a password. They are trying to dig through your trash, for bank statements and get your bank numbers. And so they go out, and this morning was trash morning on my block. And so if somebody at 2 a.m., all the trash cans were on the street with a bunch of bank statements and personal information in there, a social engineer could have gone down my block and dug through the trash without anybody seeing them, and taken things out and hacked people's bank accounts and routing information on that. Social engineers also go through phone books. They go through your social media stuff to try to guess your passwords. They try to figure out who your kids are, where your kids go to school, and all of that. I know you guys don't have kids. So a social engineer is someone trying to get a password or trying to get access to a digital network by doing something in the real world. And that is the main threat when it comes to hackers. Hackers can't get into systems anymore. They're just too secure on their own. But hackers can befriend someone and get a password. And so they use what's called phishing scams. LCA has actually been the target of many phishing scams just over the last 6 months. I have an email saved in my inbox from Greg Miller telling me he needed me to do him a favor, that he needed me to give $200 to a random address, and he'd give me $200 back. And I know Greg Miller. I know he would never ask me to do that. And so somebody had created a fake Greg Miller email address. They saw on LCA's website that I was an employee there, so they used the trust of my relationship with Mr. Miller to try to scam me. By the way, they did that to Mr. Helling too just a week or two before I got the email. So phishing scams are everywhere. It's where I'm trying to pretend to be someone you know so I can get something from you, whether it's money, whether it's information, and they're highly popular. The rule with phishing scam, guys, is if it looks suspicious, it actually is. If it doesn't feel right, it isn't right. Mr. Miller would never ask me to randomly just give someone $200 of my own money and tell me, oh, I'll pay you back, I'll pay you back. He would never do that. So right then when I got that email, an alarm went off in my head and said, I don't think this is Greg Miller. And I looked at the actual email address. The name said Greg Miller. The email address was somebody from Russia. And so be careful of phishing scams. Always shred all your documents that you put in the trash, and don't just do a line shredder that cuts it in lines. Do a confetti shredder that just turns your paper into absolute confetti. And just be careful who you trust. It's a lot easier to get information than you think it is. Next, we're going to talk about passwords. A lot of people, social engineers and hackers, are trying to get your passwords. The passwords are the key to the internet. For right now, they are how we make things secure. And if somebody has your password, they can get into a lot of information. So here's how hackers try to get your passwords. They do not just sit in front of a laptop and type random things in hoping to guess your password. That's not what people do. What people do, how people get your passwords, are they write what's called a robot or a bot. And the bot is able to enter 1,000,000 guesses of your password into the system at a time. They start with A, and then if that's not your password, they go to B, and then they go to C, and then they go 1 through 1,000, and that takes them a split second. And then they try all the words in the dictionary, and that takes another second. And then they go higher until the user gives up and turns it off and has it focus on somebody else's password. So to protect against bots, here's how you do that. Your password needs to be at least 8 characters. You have to have a number, a symbol, a lowercase, and an uppercase letter. That substantially increases the amount of time it will take a robot to guess your password. Another thing we need to talk about passwords is once a robot gets your password, and your username, they will run that username and password across every other website on the internet. And so if they find that your username is flowers are amazing and your password is Rodelia's, uppercase Rodelia's _1, then they will run that username password combo through everything, through all the banking websites, through all the social media websites, through all the email websites. So if you use the same password for every single website, if one of them is hacked, all of them will get hacked. They will get everything. So it's a good idea to use different passwords for different websites. Another great thing to protect against robots is to have over 30 plus characters in your password, is to just write a sentence and type a sentence out. I don't use this for my passwords, but I always thought a great way to do passwords would be to, if it was Facebook, to type Facebook is the best website that has ever websited. That's a very hard password to guess because there are over 30 characters and the robot would take forever to guess that. I mean, just the amount of options grows exponentially with every character. And then if I was Gmail, I would say Gmail is the best website that has ever websited. And if I was on Wells Fargo, I would say Wells Fargo is the best website that has ever websited. It's a different password because the first word is different, but it's very easy to remember and it's very hard for someone else to guess. So be careful with your passwords. Another note here is use two-factor authentication. Two-factor authentication means the website will text you a code or they'll ask you a security question. Be careful with your security questions too. That's another great way to make sure nobody gets into your accounts. Two-factor authentication is really great. So yeah, that's a little bit about passwords. And then let's talk about social media. Proper etiquette on social media. Last few slides ago, I talked about those football players who got in trouble for what they posted on social media. I also mentioned some teachers LCA have gotten in trouble for social media. Some people I know have not gotten jobs because they interviewed for a job and they did really well in the interview, but then the person who was looking at hiring them looked at all their social media stuff and decided, ooh, this person would be a lousy fit for our business. This happens all the time in the church world with pastors, believe it or not. A congregation that's hiring you as a pastor wants to know you're a decent human being, and if you're not a decent human being on social media, they're not going to hire you, right? Because they assume you're not a good person. So be careful what you post. Be careful what you text. Be careful what you say. Every single person can see what you post on social media. One of the quiz questions is going to be, who can see what you post on social media? The answer is everyone. Make sure you're only befriending people you know in real life and communicating with people you know in real life. It's very easy for people to pretend to be something they're not on social media. Very easy to post pictures of yourself that tell a lie. Very easy to post profile pictures. So I would look at everybody's profile before you friend them. Look and make sure that their profile actually goes back quite a ways. If there's only 3 things posted on their profile, they're probably not a real person. That account was probably made up yesterday. So be careful there. Be careful what personal information you give out. Never give your name. Never give your address to a stranger. Never give your location away. That's just a recipe for disaster. You will get kidnapped. So be careful what you post on social media. Now let's talk about pornography. And now we're getting into the government, losing your freedom because you get arrested. Mr. Musil has a degree in pornography addictions. He can talk to you more about that side of things. But let me just tell you, I know 4 people now in my own personal life, 4 friends of mine who accessed websites they should not have accessed on the internet. And the next day, a cop showed up at their door and took every single hard drive in their house away. Their PC, their laptops, their cell phones, and their tablets, and they are not getting them back. And then a few months later, they showed up at their door again with what's called an arrest warrant and arrested them. They were tried as a sex offender and were thrown in jail and put on probation. Could not go anywhere near a school, could not go anywhere near a movie theater, could not go anywhere near children, any family gathering that had children under the age of 18. They were forbidden from for 10 years. Remember what I said. Every device has an address. If you're downloading illegal movies and TV shows and music, every website has an address. Every device has an address. They know and can trace where those things are going. So be very, very careful there. Do not access illegal information online. It can be traced, and you can use things to make it harder for the government to trace. There is nothing out there that makes it impossible for the government to trace. They can figure it out. They do figure it out every day, and people wind up getting in a whole heap of trouble. So be very, very careful what websites you access online. The government is spying on every single thing we do. They are collecting data on every single thing we do. So just be very, very careful where you go online, what you look at online, what you download online, and be very, very careful. There's several more stories I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you my password, but I gotta go, and this video is already long enough. So hopefully that gives you enough for the quiz. that will be later this week. And keep on keeping on, guys. I believe in you, and I'm pulling for you. We're all in this together.